Welcome to the Middle Age Podcast with me, Raging Rich.
And me, T.A. Shalano.
And TA, we have another guest episode today. We are joined by Mel from Men Against Mountains. So thank you very much for joining us, Mel.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate it.
So, yeah, thanks for joining us today. Can you tell us a bit about the Men Against Mountains movement?
Yeah. As a woman, I advocate for men's mental health and men's rights, I suppose. It's turned sort of naturally into that since I've had more conversations with men. So I started it probably about 4 years ago. Had a little bit of time out here and there for my own personal reasons over the years. But yeah, just started sharing my own personal griefs and difficulties with mental health. Really, I mean, I'm 53 and I've had poor mental health since I was in my 20s. So back then, there was no social media, there was no anywhere to really reach out to. Most of the things I went through, I had to muddle through by myself. But I'd gone through quite a lot of other things and I just put it out on Facebook. And I had like so many men message me just saying, "Oh, Mel, do you know what? I'm going through this. Thank you for sharing that. But I've got no one I can talk to. And I feel really isolated within my difficulties right now." So I sort of started speaking to this other man and he wanted to do something. So we started Men Against Mountains together. But within a couple of months, he was going through some really bad, real dark problems. And he was very suicidal. And I helped him and supported him through that. But he wasn't able to carry on with Men Against Mountains. So I just carried it on by myself. And I was a little bit daunted by it at first, being a woman. There's not many women doing what I'm doing in this space, but I feel like there's a need for a more of a nurturing woman's touch to men's mental health, just to bring that divide again with men and women at the moment. There seems to be a lot of hate being thrown back and forwards, and I really hope that more women come on board and feel like that it's actually okay. It doesn't take away anything about women's rights or what women go through, but it's really great to hold this space for men because it's really needed. But what I found is over the last 4 years, there's just such an amazing support community for men now. There's amazing groups being set up by people like myself that are like-minded, that have gone through lived experiences. Yeah, it's so wonderful to see. My feed is filled with men speaking out, talking about how they feel and getting the support, which is just incredible.
That's brilliant, Mel. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome.
as you say, you've built this community up on Instagram. What sort of feedback have you had? You said you've had some good comments back from people. How do you kind of get that feedback? What kind of is it more from messages that you get on there, or have you sort of had? I know you do a lot of live talks as well, and things.
Yeah.
So how does that kind of work with getting feedback from people?
Yeah, I mean, it's grown organically. I've never done any like sponsored posts or anything like that. I've just organically grown. I very rarely add people to the page. I let them come to me. And I think a lot of my conversations are held within the DMs, and there's that confidentiality there and that trust that's grown over the years. So initially, I was just popping a post up. Men would share their stories on the page initially. So we did that. And then that sort of just organically grown into live chats because, as you know, that it's quite raw, isn't it? When someone shows a man shows their vulnerabilities on a live chat, it really helps other people, other men, feel that that's okay. It almost gives them permission. So, like the feedback I get is just amazing. I spoke to someone the other day about this because she's trying to do similar to what I'm doing, but she's getting a lot of backlash for it. And I don't understand that. I'm not getting any. And I don't know why I don't get any. Maybe it's because I've put myself out there. I think the trust is there. Or maybe it's just me as a person that I'm let myself be vulnerable. I'm sort of a different age group, maybe. I'm not sort of an influencer type person. I'm not a coach. Yeah, I just think people find it easy to open up to me, which is sort of worrying in one respect because a lot of the men say they find it really difficult to open up to their partners, but they tell me their deepest, darkest secrets that they've held on for probably 20 odd years. So I try to then nurture that into them doing that. So there's a lot of support that goes on that people don't see. I probably get up to about 40, 50 messages every day. So it's a lot. But we've got a WhatsApp group now as well, which one of the guys facilitates, that started following my page right from the beginning. And I gave him that role because I think he needed it in his journey to start giving back. I think when you've been through the most awful times, you almost get this clarity. It's time then to be able to give to somebody else. And I think that helps in your journey too. So I gave him that role. And we try to keep it quite small. I don't advertise it very much. There's about 50, 60 men in the group, and some people leave and then we'll add another couple in. So it's not too overwhelming to navigate, because it's just, there's probably 300-400 messages going back and forth every day. So that's good. And I did used to hold support groups, talking groups in Peterborough, where I'm from, up till sort of COVID. And then they sort of stopped. But I'd love to do that again. I'd like to sort of get the groups up and running again, because they were really going well. We had like 25, 30 men turn up every week.
Wow. That's
It's
incredible.
good, isn't it? Yeah. Being a woman as well, I was just like, I don't think people are shocked anymore though, which is great, isn't it? Like people still call me bro. I still get like called bro sometimes, but I think it's important for the men to know that it's a woman running the page, so they know who they're talking to. So they've got that choice if they don't want to. But it's worrying that men don't want to speak to their most loved ones in their life. And I think it's because they just don't want people to see them any differently or fall out of love with them and see them as a weaker link, maybe. It is worrying though. And that's what I really want to start nurturing more. That it's okay, that's completely okay. And if those people can't hold that space for you, then they're not they shouldn't be in your life. We should be giving that to each other, that compassion, understanding.
I suppose you kind of then built almost like this sort of niche that you seem to have connected with people, almost like a form of therapy. I mean, in
Yeah.
the podcast interviews that I've heard of yours, you said that you're a shy person in a confident person's body, which probably resonates a little bit with us doing this podcast. But what impact has then this work and this movement had on your own personal confidence, your life, your mental health, well-being, etc.?
I mean, I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned a lot about pushing myself to my limits, where that's not always the most healthiest thing you should do. Like burnout is horrendous. So I do navigate the page a lot better now than I did 2 years ago. I used to answer messages at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, which I don't do anymore because I have to put that line there, which I think is really important for your own self. But I've just learned so much more about not just men, but just people and myself. And I've got so much inner peace from doing this, like from giving back and just so I'm not professional. I do this in my spare time. I don't get paid for it, even though that's something that I would love to do in the future, go into a mental health role. I've just gone for a job with Mind Charity, so fingers crossed. Like, because that would just be, I know that I'm good at what I do, but I am very shy. I do get really uncomfortable, and especially on the lives, I like, honestly, my anxiety is awful, and I don't know whether that comes across on the lives or not. But I allow myself, as I said before, to be vulnerable, and I think that's really important. I probably got this look where like people come into the gym where I look and they look at me like because of my tattoos and stuff, and it's just that people's perception of you initially, but I'm not like the way I look, I suppose. I'm the softest person, and yeah, people just have those perceptions of you, I suppose. And I do a lot of mental health support via the gym where I work as well. It's a safe space especially for the men that come in. They'll come and have a coffee and not necessarily train sometimes. They just want to just express how they feel. So that's another thing that I do probably that it's just, yeah, adds on. But I've learned so much about myself being, I think I'm just so much in tune with myself now. I've stripped my life right back to the minimum, quite a simple life. I love it. I'm sort of going into my hibernation mode now. I feel it's almost like be like winter, if that makes sense. It's like listen to the animals, see what they're doing, like see the trees shedding their leaves. And I'm going with that. I find that work for me now. So yeah, it's taking a step back. But yeah, definitely learned more about men over the last 4 years than I ever have in my whole life, which is good. But yeah, more about myself too. I think you do when you give back.
I think so, yeah. I think we've said when we've been doing this as well, it's interesting because it's helped us with our mental health a lot, just chatting and doing conversations, not just with guests like yourself, but even just when it's us doing these episodes as well. It's really helped us. And we were talking to someone a few weeks ago. We'd gone to a gig and they were saying it must be really good just to be able to chat about things. It's kind of like instead of going to the pub, we're just doing it on a podcast.
Although, to be fair, Rich, for honesty here, we often do still go to the pub even after we've done a recording. So sometimes almost debriefing what we've been doing. But yeah, it is good to have that, I think, in terms of like outlets for people and opportunities to speak, and especially in a world now where people probably speak less as well, people's engagement on tech all the time as well, and less conversations happen the way they used to. Yeah, I think that's quite an interesting one. I mean, we actually interviewed someone called Laura in season 1, which was a female, about her sort of mental health experiences. And again, you've obviously put a lot about your own experiences into this and your work. So how do you feel you manage your own mental health now?
A lot better than I used to. I think most of mine comes around acceptance. Is learning to accept that this is me. Obviously have to try and adapt because things change. I mean, my anxiety back in my 20s was I lost a really good job because of it, because there was just no understanding in the workplace. A really quite high profile job. It wasn't the workload that was causing me. It was just something going on internally within myself that no one was understanding, not even the doctors. They thought I was on drugs and all sorts. That's the sort of how I was received for it. So my own mental health now is a lot to do with acceptance and working with that. Because I think, and if you keep fighting it all the time, you don't get anywhere. It's almost like, right, sit back, let me feel this. My anxiety isn't as bad, but when I was going through like a really bad stage where it was grief and lost another job because of my chronic pain. So I live with chronic pain every day, and that chips away at you. So I have to like listen to myself, like I said before about the burnout, and just make sure I rest and not really be too overproductive all the time, because it does really affect my well-being when I do too much all at once. Is that overwhelm? So yeah, I've just learned to sit with it, and then, like you said, with these like-minded conversations and having those people that really get it. Like I'll speak to other people that are going through chronic pain, not necessarily my friends, because they don't understand. When I'm in a social situation, I will say now, right, I've had enough, guys. I'll see you later. Not make any excuses, not try and pretend or anything. Just say I've had enough. I'm in pain. I've got to go. And where before I try and like stretch out the night as long as I possibly could and put myself in the position that just had a detriment to my mental health and my overall physical health as well. Just because I was not people pleasing, but it was just maybe a bit of FOMO.
I think you're right there, Mel, about that, because I think there were times I'd go out, with our group of friends and sometimes think, really not feeling it at the moment, but you think, oh, something's going to happen. They'll all come back and say what a great night they had and all that kind of thing. And then you sort of realize you've got to look after yourself more so, because if you're not doing that, you're not giving your full self to other things. It needs to be that you actually are making sure you're choosing when you are going out, because you're then giving your full self to that time. And I think that's probably a better way of thinking about things. Nobody's going to be upset if you're not there. They might miss your presence in that they want, they want to spend time with you, but actually they'd rather have you there and you be happy and be a part of everything than sort of sitting there and not enjoying yourself.
Yeah, I think you have to listen to yourself. There's so many coaches and there's so much advice out there now. It's like gone the other way. Like when I first got going through mine, there was nothing. And now there seems to be like this overload of advice and where to. And I think we forget to listen to ourselves. Like it's good to be guided, it's good to have mentors, and it's good to have those conversations and take snippets from other people. But their way is not going to be your way. I always say it, there's not a one size fits all, it's one size fits one. And we have to learn to start listening to ourselves. It's so important. And sometimes solitude, like being, I know I advocate for reaching out and people reaching in and having those conversations. But I also believe that there is a certain part of that we require solitude to learn from ourselves more than anybody, because it comes from us. We are individuals. And that's another thing that I've learned is that it's actually okay to just take some time out, be quiet, be still, and rest, you know.
It's that balance as well, isn't it, between, like you say, taking the time for yourself and to be comfortable in your own skin, for want of a better phrase, in your own company, versus where people are not in a great state as
Yeah.
well. And actually what they do need is either to reach out or for somebody to help or reach out to them. It's that sort of balance. And I think it's interesting that in terms of the work that you've done with men, I mean, in terms of a woman leading a men's mental health conversation, do you think that enables men to feel more confident to engage than they would either with other men ordinarily, or if it was a man leading the movement? And do you think it helps to improve women's understanding of men's mental health that you're doing this?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, I have got about an 80% male following and 20% female, but I do get a lot of support from the women. But they're learning through what I post. Yeah, I think with this divide, I think, as I said, we're all individuals. So like, not all men are going to want to speak to a woman about it, and not all men were going to want to speak to a guy. And I think it's nice to just have that balance, or just have that option there, to be able to do that. And I just think, as I said at the beginning, that bit of nurturing is required. This motivational type coaching type thing, where not it's not going to fit all men. Men need to fall from head to heart sometimes, and maybe that comes more from a nurturing place. And you're not conditioned to do that from boys. It changes even when you're little. Something just changes, and if you fall over, you're told to, suck it up and wipe yourself down. And no, boys need cuddling, and they need that nurturing from their mothers. And I think I provide maybe a little bit of that mothering, because I'm a little bit older as well. I get a lot of young men speak to me, which is, it's crazy, isn't it? You think that, a 20-year-old wouldn't want to speak to a 53-year-old woman, but they do. So there's something there that's needed in this space. Sure, yeah.
I wonder if part of that is the authenticity of an older person's experience as well, perhaps compared to if they were trying to talk to female of their own generation, that
Yeah.
life experience and wouldn't be there maybe.
Yeah.
That probably makes sense as well. Yeah. Although I have lived a fruit like a very colourful life. But I think it depends on, it's just finding that right person to open up to is so important. And this is why the men's groups work, because it's especially like the walking talking type groups where men are shoulder to shoulder and they're walking along, so they're not sort of necessarily sat in a clinical environment. I mean, Andy Mann's club's amazing, but they are sort of more of a circle type group where men talk. But I think a lot of the walk talk groups are really flourishing right now, because men need to be active in that, so they find it easier to talk while they're doing. And I always pinpoint them to those sort of groups. I think it's really important. I think it takes that pressure off almost, and it builds up, like you said at the beginning, about building up the confidence to do it. So sometimes it's easier initially to talk to someone by DMs. I mean, we always send voice notes. When I'm talking to someone, it'll be a voice note. So we're talking, or, if they want a phone call, I will call them. That I think slowly just builds up that sort of like, this is okay, it normalizes it a little bit. And then I say, why don't you try one of these groups? And then we'll try and find them a group in their area. And then, and then they're joining them. And then they're starting their own groups. And it's just like amazing. So it has a great ripple effect.
It's interesting you mentioning those groups because, as you say, there's kind of a change now where not everything is just people sat in a circle. They're kind of bringing physical health into it. And I was listening to a podcast the other day where one of the co-hosts was actually talking about doing man v fat football to help
Yeah.
him with losing weight, but also spoke about kind of the mental health effect that it's had on him as well, the sort of the positivity from that and the camaraderie that he's had from going to a group like that. And I think the fact that now they're doing kind of walking, talking groups and things where you can just interact with someone in a slightly different way. It's not about, like you say, that kind of clinical format of you're in a circle just chatting. It's not a stand up if you want to talk kind of scenario. It's really good those things exist now and they're kind of built. I suppose, as you say, everyone's different. So there's something out there for anyone who's struggling. There's going to be something that they can find and that they can have to help them with their struggles. It might not necessarily be that sort of standardized, as you say, sitting in the circle. There are a lot of other options out there for people, and obviously your work as well online with your Instagram lives and your posts on there. So there's a lot of great resource out there. One of the things we wanted to ask as well, one of the terms that we hear a lot is toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
which we find sometimes is thrown as a sort of term that's kind of thrown out. I know there was one with the football last season with the WSL where the comment was sort of thrown out of male aggression and things like that. Toxic masculinity, it's often sort of considered from a female perspective, but how do you kind of think that has an impact on men's mental health? Because I sort of see it from the point of view that masculinity has now become just toxic masculinity. There's no
Yeah.
masculinity just being, it's standard what it meant in the past.
Yeah. I think people have got the wrong idea about toxic masculinity. So toxic masculinity to me is how men are expected to behave. So it's like men have been put in this box for so long, right from time began, that they had to be the provider, the protector. Men are more likely to be the aggressor and that sort of thing. So we're putting men in this box, and it's how men are expected to behave. So if they behave slightly different, then they're seen as weak. Like if they speak out about or they cry, then they're seen as like the weaker link. So I think the term is, as you said, it's thrown around so much. And I think men are starting to believe that as well. I think there's that self stigma inside that nobody gives a shit about them, where actually that's what people do. It's finding those right people. But yeah, there's a lot going around, and there's a lot of this hyper sort of feminist movement that's blaming men for past. Women were leaders back when time began as well. We've not just had kings, we've had queens too that have ruled. And I think people forget about that. So that is just thrown. I saw some comments on the thread. I don't get it on my page. I don't get women saying, "Oh, what about women? What about this?" And you open a conversation up about men, and then it will be turned, well, what about women? No, women have it worse. And we've got to just stop all that. Everyone deserves to have care and compassion and understanding, regardless of gender. It's weird because femininity can change. Women can be strong, they can be all this, they can be anything that they want to be in today's world, but men can't still. So yeah, we need to get rid of that term. I hate it. I tend not to do many posts about toxic masculinity just solely because I don't want to put people in a box. I'll try and change the wording on it a little bit. And I've done posts about the man box before, and especially the younger generation coming through now, they still feel that they've got to earn so much money, be living in Dubai, have all this sort of, I don't know why our society has changed like that, but it's, you're not a man unless you do this, this, and this. And when like it's okay to be angry and it's okay to have those emotions. Like anger is a natural emotion, and I think men are classed as only being that. We forget about all the other ones that they feel as well. But if you like lose it one time, then that will stay with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered, there's a couple of questions we had there that I think we've probably covered really around how, I suppose, gender stereotyping had almost created a hostile environment and the challenges to that. And then the drive for equality, which is fine, but then it almost becomes
Yeah.
then like an anti sort of scenario. But what do you think can be done, I mean, to reduce instances of, I suppose, particularly male suicide, which is higher, but actually suicides for, for men and women? What was the one thing you would introduce if you could?
I think we need to move on from the get talking conversation now. Men are talking, and are sharing everything, but there's a lot more going on, like the social injustices and stuff like that, like family court, for example. Men still don't automatically get 50-50 custody when there's divorce and stuff like that. And they should be given that option, I think. And that's just a small example, but boys are falling behind in the education system. They have done for decades. This teaching style doesn't suit boys. We have to think about alcohol addiction. We have to bring these all in and support them alongside the suicide crisis as well, because there's so many links to it. When I speak to men that are feeling suicidal, which we will learn more about male suicide when we speak to those that are going through it or have felt it. We will only learn for male suicide for the research. There's a wonderful lady called Susie Bennett, and she's done this amazing research. I'll send you it. It's just incredible. And there was an APPG report on men and boys a couple of years ago, which the government have got all the answers. They've got what they need, but they've not actually acted on it, which is really disappointing because the suicide rate in males has gone up again. We're still losing men in just devastating numbers every year. So we need to look past the get talking narrative now. We need to look a bit further, deeper into why men complete suicide. And it's for a whole lot of other reasons. There's not just one answer to that. It's not just mental ill health. It's systemic failures. It's financial worries. It's stress. It's loneliness. It's isolation. It's family breakdowns. And that's why men are dying by suicide, because there's not actually any resolve or resolution to what they're going through. And that's how they feel when you have those conversations. They're like, well, it doesn't matter how much I talk, I'm still not seeing my kids. I'm still broken. So we need to find resolves for these situations. And Finland have halved their suicide rates. I did a post on it the other day, and I'm still researching. Someone do a bit more about it. They've got like this 10-year suicide prevention plan, and they've got a new one now from 2020 to 2030. And what they've implemented is just amazing. They've halved their suicide rates, but they've linked alcoholism with the care that you get through alcohol. Like alcohol deaths are very similar to the suicide. I think it's like 73% of alcohol deaths are men. The suicide rates are 74%. So there's a link there. And I would say a lot of the alcohol deaths are suicide and vice versa. It does make sense. So we need to look at that. We need to work the people that look after, we need to bring them two together. We need to work them two together to try and bring them down. But it's such a massive conversation. But yeah, we do need to move on from this. The reason why men die by suicide is because they don't talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that next
100%.
step of then what is the the thing that then takes that to, like you say, either resolving or instilling a more permanent improvement for people in their lives that will be sustainable, I guess, as well. And
Yeah,
keeping talking is probably part of that as well. So just talking and then drifting
yeah,
off even is another thing, I suppose, is keeping something going and like you say, finding that resolution.
That was
It'd
really
be interesting
interesting
about
about
Finland
Finland. Yeah.
and what they've obviously done there.
yeah, they're amazing. Like, I'll send you the link. I'll send you the PDF. Send me your email address and I'll send it. It's just, I'm still reading it. So I want to do some more posts about alcohol and suicide. I think it's so very much linked. You know, when we're all going through shit, we tend to sort of drink or self-sabotage a little bit. So it makes that sort of sense for that then leads to isolation and then it sort of has that, keeps having that rolling effect. So it just makes more sense to me.
I mean, I suppose that's the thing as well. When we're talking about like doing this as an example, and we've only been doing this for well a few months now, really, I
Couple of
suppose.
months,
But
yeah.
yeah, as doing something as well, having a positive outlet in your life, you know. And obviously, I've been writing as well, and you know, and we've been obviously released a book and stuff like that. So, you know, so kind of doing things that are more beneficial to your life as well, isn't it? And trying to, I suppose, like you say, get away from anything that's destructive. So how do you move people from things that are destructive that they're help using to cope, but
Yeah,
actually what they need is something more constructive in their life that kind of keeps them going. And I think that's why I'm drawing out of the conversation with you is that that's also helped you in terms of
yeah,
your own life experiences. This working with other people and helping and supporting other people probably then been a massive benefit to you. And it's that bit where as well, there's no financial, it's not like you're getting paid to do that or like we're not getting paid to talk and do this now, but
no,
it's actually then still doing something that's positive is perhaps what's missing sometimes in society, I guess. Really interesting to draw out, like you say, what they've done in sort of Finland and whatnot. I think part of the problem
yeah,
I think, as well is in, like I said, these states, but maybe UK culture as well has probably contributed to that to some degree as
yeah,
well.
yeah. But definitely all the research that I do, because it does come from obviously conversations with the men, and I do collate my posts mainly from the conversations, what they're speaking about, but it also is very much researched as well. When you listen to men, and that's saying about the get talking narrative is about listening to what the men are saying and getting those answers from those people that have contemplated suicide or made attempts. I've done that myself, and it was such a dark and isolating place to be in. But also that solitude that I found in that, I found that almost to be like a bit of a safe space within as well. So it's definitely working alongside that, and just trying to find the answers that from the men that are speaking about it. We learn so much, and these men say, you know, all they need is someone to just be there for them. They just want a little bit of understanding and compassion because that's what's missing. We're not going to save everybody. We're never going to be able to have a zero suicide because, especially with older men, like when I've researched it with men that are like in their 80s, when they've like lost a life partner, you know, they've been married for 50, 60 years and then they lose their life. That's, you know, men die by suicide. There's so much in this conversation that is missing from a lot of advocacy. And it gets quite frustrating because it's quite generic, I find. It's needed. I mean, people are trying, and I'm never going to put anyone down for doing what they do because it's still needed. There's still that place for it, but we need to go dig a lot deeper into the conversations around suicide to get the answers. And I'm getting a bit upset because I know we could save lives if people would just, if they want to do advocacy, then dig deeper into those conversations because we can save people's lives that way.
I think that's an interesting thing as well because there is no kind of one overarching that it's this type of person or it's this class or money or everything. You know, it's something that is seen across the social spectrum, isn't it? And like you say, age ranges and sometimes that maybe gets forgotten actually. And sometimes
Yeah,
people who are actually very wealthy as well.
yeah,
It's not always you know, financial struggles and things like that. Sometimes other issues that people then
yeah,
Well, there's
so
that really interesting video that Norwich Football Club did last year. I don't know
yeah,
if you saw it, but It's the one where there's the two fans and they're sat next to each other and the one's there cheering them on and he's really sort of engaged with the game and the other guy's just sitting there and they're kind of doing it over the course of the season and you think, oh, it's going to be the guy who's really quiet at the end who actually, and it's not, it's the other guy and you kind of go at the end, oh, wow. And
Yeah.
that kind of thing, isn't it? No one knows if you're not talking about things and you're not trying to get help from someone in some way, it's really hard to know who is suffering. And
I mean, the one
Yeah,
that
yeah.
probably interests me the most, to be honest, from a famous person point of view, was probably Robin Williams, who was this incredible comedian, comic actor who brought so much joy to people, but was clearly this sort of tormented individual on the inside, and that persona that he put out was him as trying to escape how he really felt. And I think that's an interesting, that goes back to what Rich was just saying about that particular advert is that, isn't it, where sometimes people try and put on a brave face
the
as
Robin
well.
Williams one is interesting because I've read Christopher Reeve's autobiography, and when Christopher Reeve had his accident, Robin Williams actually went to see him. And the
Yes.
thing that snapped him out of his depression and that got him wanting to live was actually Robin Williams going to see him and just joking around with him. And you kind of think you can have someone who's had that massive positive effect on someone who's gone through such an awful life experience. And then for Robin Williams, then as you say, it's such a strange thing that no one can really
But then
properly comprehend. Yeah.
people think he's happy, and the support for him, I suppose that's I guess the interesting thing about that. Really, it's fascinating how people deal with things, and it's not always the people that, like you say, you think. In terms of the work that you're doing, then what are your plans now for the future and sort of taking this forward?
Just keep going, I suppose, just keep chipping away. I mean, like I said, I'm doing more research. I'm on a panel in a couple of weeks in London with Susie Bennett, who I mentioned. So that's a suicide. Why men die by suicide. So that would be really interesting. It's sold out as well, which is good. So these are popping up now, and saying the conversation is going deeper. And I'm just wanted to keep learning more so I can help more men, really. I've been wonderfully donated 150 beanies by somebody who believes in what I'm doing. So I want to donate that to, and of course it's 100% profit, which is nice. I might use a little bit to get some hoodies because people keep saying, "Hey, you've got brand Men Against Mountains," and you know what? I see so much of that, and it's nice to raise money for men's causes, which is what I will be doing with it. But I don't want to sort of brand it. I just think it's so nice as it is. It's so organic and it's quite unique compared to some of the other, because people are making money out of it. And fair enough, they use it as a full-time job to do advocacy now. But yeah, I just wanted to keep it quite simple. As I said, I probably will start the groups up again. We've got like deadlifts over depression in our area, which is like the next village along for me, and I support his events, which is an amazing thing. So that's just people coming together through doing deadlifts at the gym, which is really good for your mental health, like the mental fitness side of that. So I will probably be starting maybe a type group, something like that. As I said, the men that come to the gym of all different ages, shapes, and sizes, and they're all there for different reasons. But there's a lot of them there for their mental health, for mental fitness. So I think that's something I can do in my local area. We've got two Andy Man's clubs in Peterborough. So I think I need to do something that's a little bit different, like the walk talk or something like that, that just gives men another branch to sort of another option to go to. Yeah, just keep going. Just keep putting the posts out there, growing the page. I suppose I'm not far off 10,000 followers, but I'm not really bothered about how big it gets. It's just, yeah, just keeping it organic and real and raw, I suppose. And the lives, I've not going to do any more this year. I'm trying to find somewhere to move to, and my daughter's just started university and not been great with her mental health, so I need to just take a step back from the lives and I'll start them back in the new year. So maybe you'd like to come on and be guests because that would be great. Have it like turn the favour and talk about your experiences.
Oh, thank you very much. No,
Yes,
that's
thank
very
you.
kind of you. I mean, I think the interesting, you hear it often said a lot, is to be the change that you want to be in the world. And I think that's what I'm taking in terms of what you've gone out and done, is to go and do something positive and support people and use your own experiences. And I think that, I genuinely think that's a fantastic thing that you've done, really. And you'll never know, I suppose, potentially how many people you may have saved or how many people's lives that you have changed. But I think just thank you for what you've done there, because I think that really is an incredible thing that you've put so much into, that has really resonated and connected with men and whatnot. I really do think that's an amazing thing to have done.
100%. And when you spoke about earlier about giving back, and you mentioned where you're doing the beanies and you're not taking it for profit, I think that's brilliant. And when you said, you're not making any money from this, it's all organic. It's an absolutely fantastic cause that you've sort of promoting through your Instagram, and really do appreciate everything that you've been doing for people. I've had problems with my mental health in the last couple of years with a few things, and obviously didn't know about your page. It would have been great at the time, but yeah, it's a really great thing that you're doing. It means a lot, certainly to us, seeing all the work you've been doing and looking at the posts you've been making. It's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, some of the posts take me weeks because I want to research them. So there's a lot of time that people don't see goes into what I do. So yeah, it's that focus. It keeps me ticking along, keeps my brain working. I read and I write a lot. I think it's really important to write instead of just always using keyboards and stuff. So I like pen, everything's in a pen and paper. I write in a book, and I do it that way. But yeah, I just want to just keep chipping away and hopefully saving some more lives, because I know that I definitely have done that, and that makes me sleep easy at night knowing that I have prevented some more suicides. It's really, really, really important to me.
In a world, where things can be so negative, to have that influence, that is unbelievable, really, to have that positive influence on people, and the extensions there of people that didn't lose people because of that as well, and things like that. So yeah, that's incredible. And thank you obviously for coming and talking to us today as well.
No, you're really welcome, and saying I'd love to return the favour and hear your stories. And yeah, I've got a great big long list of lives, people wanting to men coming on lives, and that's one amazing thing as well. Men want to share their stories, and by sharing those stories, we're helping more men. That has a more of a ripple effect, and that just keeps going on and on and on. So if we all do our bit, if everybody just, when like it's like a mental health awareness month, like it is November at the moment, and like in June, and suicide prevention day, and you will see those posts go up on that day, and then no one does anything else the rest of the year. It's really important that we put out our experiences online, because as you said, you just don't know who's reading that, or the effect it will have on someone, the positive effect. And it just might make someone just stop and think, and it does. So we keep sharing our stories, keep connecting with people.
100%. So thank you, Mel. Thank you for joining us here today on the Middle Age Podcast. One thing we just wanted to ask was, where can people find Men Against Mountains, please?
Yeah, just on Instagram. I do repost it on Facebook, but yeah, it's Men Against Mountains, the movement. If you just put Men Against Mountains, it's the only one that will come up. So I don't think there's any other Men Against anything. But yeah, just on Instagram, and I just put it back on Facebook. Hopefully, I'll have a website, but there's a link tree in my bio anyway, where you can click on. So yeah, but thank you so much. I've loved this conversation. It's been really just nice and relaxed. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We normally do, when we have a guest on, we normally ask them to end the episode for us. So is there anything that you'd like to say just to close out the interview?
All right, okay. That's put me on the spot. Just keep listening to people. It's not always about talking, but just holding space for those people to allow them, and listen to what they say. And I think that's just a really nice, probably way to end it. We just need to be there for each other.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Mel. Really appreciate your time out to talk to us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.